Ever wondered what the entity actually thinks of the bonus cosmetic killers in-game? Does it like them? Does it hate them? Or is it somewhere in between? Hey everyone, today we're going to try and figure those things out. To discern the entity's opinion, we can look at, well, not much admittedly, in this case. So I got your input too, and we're gonna try and figure it out together. Hey everyone, and let's get into it. Does not like them. HUNK I actually think would be quite disliked by the entity, and it's mainly down to just the sheer lack of emotion that he has. I think he's mainly here probably because of some of the Resident Evil characters who fear him, but ultimately I don't think he'd produce much emotion for the entity, or provide much benefit to the realm that other characters don't already bring. HUNK is someone who is given a goal and sets out to achieve it, but he doesn't express much in the process. A loyal, efficient killer, but not one the entity is going to like much, I think. On a surface level, I think HUNK seems like a good asset, but after a few trials, I don't think he's really providing much, aside getting back-to-back 4Ks every time. Draugr is a character who is technically just Knight, but more zombie-like and probably soulless. As a result, I think Knight's high placement and favour with the entity is going to plummet down here when he's in this state. In this state, everything that generated emotion before is pretty much gone in my opinion. He's not really human, and so can't feel as much for his guards. He's not really that much scarier, and debatably less scary than his base look. In general, his anger and his lust for violence and all the rest of it is likely tempered in this form, leading me to think the entity is not a fan. In fact, what seems to be keeping him alive based on the descriptions is the entity's magic. So if anything, I would view this more as a threat on the entity's part to keep him in line and not end up like the rest of his guards. This is what could happen if he doesn't partake in the trials. Not that that's currently an issue for him. Discontent with them. Ferryman is a character I think the entity is going to be relatively discontent with. It's a pretty soulless character after all. Someone who waited around in the underworld to row people across a river. He's sort of just been vibing down there for years on end. Bored beyond belief. Whilst the realm might provide him some excitement and let him unleash any built-up rage, he's still fairly soulless, and I think not far off being tossed to the void. For this reason, whilst he might be a decent asset for a short while, I think ultimately he's not going to last very long, which is really what the entity wants when it picks these characters. Therefore, I think overall discontent with the Ferryman. Armoured Titan is one I got some advice from my Discord for, because I don't know the most about Attack on Titan. It seems to be a similar case to Ferryman though, of someone who's sort of on the brink of the void already, and while scary looking and intimidating, likely would not last very long in the realm itself, being difficult in complying and being overall defeated. Apparently its grinning too is just a feature of the character designs, not necessarily portraying it as happy, which I got wrong before. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the Armoured Titan. From what I've heard though, it seems to be around here, in this spot of serving out of a requirement to, but likely not enjoying it and feeling very guilty. Equally though, maybe that's enough emotion being created with those thoughts and feelings. Xenomorph Queen I actually think the entity is not too big on. After all, I think the only way it can really control Xenomorph is with the presence of the Queen, which I don't think it would like. The Xenomorph is going to do what it needs to survive and keep the Queen alive, specifically. Therefore I think the presence of the Queen is this almost begrudging take to manipulate Xenomorph. Whilst the Queen will be a perfectly good asset and will provide plenty of scares for the survivors, I think it's mostly here because of the base Xenomorph's almost requirement for it in order to remain loyal. There is clear benefit to having her though, again in the simple sense of she's a bigger Xenomorph and debatably scarier looking too, but I don't think it's happy it needed to take it in order to control the other Xenomorphs. The Luxie is a character who acts in a fairly similar way to Pyramid Head, with him targeting specifically guilty and remorseful people. As Luxie doesn't have any established agreement with the entity like Pyramid Head does, I don't see it working out too well. In the realm it sort of seems like he's been forced to fulfill a more straightforward killer role like many of the others, and isn't allowed as much freedom, with him essentially being forced into Doctor's power and role. Someone from my Discord pointed out the damage around his hand and the wires wrapping it, suggesting the entity is likely unhappy and quite forceful of this position. The Luxie will fulfill this role and serve the entity as it sees fit. But this doesn't seem to be an agreed on thing. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. Content with them. Warhammer Titan over the Armoured Titan is apparently more of a middle-of-the-road character here that would probably just be a pretty good servant to the entity, following the trials and doing what is required. It's a similar spot to a more monstrous character who sort of just fulfills the role they're meant to. They're scary enough and they do the job for the role of the killer in the realm. It is interesting to consider too for these two Titan characters that they may be disliked in both cases, with them both eventually being removed from the realm. This is of course non-lore-wise a licensing thing, but it is interesting to consider the lore implications. With them not even being base characters, their existence is entirely wiped now aside those who did get them, meaning we could potentially even view that as a voiding. What do you think? Jabberwock is a creature that I think the entity is just about content with. It's a creature that seems to have come to the realm as a result of the lore character, the Mad Designer, who appears to have actually designed this version of it to specifically work with Kamina, the artist. For this reason, it's likely relatively favoured, or at least content with the Jabberwock. It's a strange creature though, and doesn't seem like it would create much emotion, aside the fear of it maybe, with it being quite unusual and unsettling. I think the Jabberwock is maybe here as a favour to the Mad Designer for their work with the anniversary events. A creation allowed into the realm, and so one the entity is content with. The Mordeo is a creature that I think would simply be a good asset to the realm. A creature the entity is content with and would allow to continue on with its work. Its main goal after all is just defending its land and stopping anyone who enters as they are unworthy, and in the realm it likely views its land as the map it's on, therefore it's not going to be hard to control. It looks scary enough to create fear, and although it doesn't create much emotion itself, I think it still does enough to warrant its place in the realm. I'm not sure how much humanity is within, but I do think it's largely gone in Mordeo's case. Baba Yaga is a character who I would rate in a fairly similar way to Huntress, just with less of the downsides that Huntress gets from her perks, with them both fulfilling quite a similar role, and the Baba Yaga even just appearing to be a transformation of the Huntress, embodying her. It's likely some of the survivors even identified Huntress as a Baba Yaga, and this could be the reason for it coming. She got mistaken before. She may be favoured however over Huntress due to not necessarily being tied to her perks, which are a little more defiant. I think overall she lands a bit higher than Huntress and would be much more favoured. But then again, Baba Yaga also sort of has these two sides. It could be that it sometimes obeys the rules and other times would become more defiant, a good and a bad within that result in varying circumstances. Maybe one time it's too helpful and merciful, and another time it's too cruel and brutal. Maybe too much variety there. I will say contentment overall. Actually likes them. Were-Elk is a really interesting character, and one where the most likely explanation for what this thing is that it's a manifestation of all the stories and legends about Huntress, the monster who roamed the Red Forest. It comes together to create this horrific half-human, half-elk being that is essentially just a scarier version of Huntress, with her quite literally embodying all of these beliefs about the monster people thought she was. There's a bunch of characters who regress with their transformations. I think in this case she'd actually just be a whole lot more favoured by the entity. The main downside I could possibly see is that she would likely be slightly less human due to now being more monster, and so perhaps she would create less emotion. Although I do think this is made up for by means of putting more fear into the survivors. So some favour I think. Potentially actually likes them. The Chatterer is essentially the same case as Pinhead. He's just another Cenobite, and I think is going to be embraced in the same way Pinhead was. The Cenobites don't pose a threat to the entity, with the entity able to manipulate the Lament configuration to its will. Despite their power, the entity is still easily in control, and so the desire for pleasure and pain within the realm just aligns really with what the entity wants. The fact they can teleport people out of the realm to the labyrinth too is surely a sign that they are at least in the favouring side for the entity. Minotaur is going to be a similar case to someone like Billy, where it's a character raised as a monster and so subsequently becoming one. The Minotaur is visually quite a scary being, with it being so big and imposing and roaring out with rage. Minotaur was locked into the labyrinth when he was young and fed humans, so it's no wonder he became a monster. With some partial freedom now in the realm, this is likely going to be a big source of emotion, a newfound freedom and likely years of anger and rage pent up in the labyrinth, now ready to be let out. The Minotaur is going to be quite light, I think, and seen as a great asset to the realm by the entity, with its inner conflict and scary presence. Krampus is just a fairly solid addition to the realm in the entity's many eyes, I think. In the description for it, it seems to be here almost as a punisher to the survivors, saying every survivor that has dropped pallets and blinded killers better watch out. The Krampus's presence therefore may even be a gift to the killers, a creature let out each holiday season to punish the survivors for using these tools against them. This is quite interesting, I think, and would make it quite favoured by the entity, but also the other killers when it comes around, who do likely find flashlights and pallets quite annoying in the trials. The entity's favourites. Naughty Bear is a character I think quite favoured by the entity, with him giving him bonuses in the realm, such as the narrator, which the entity manifests within Naughty Bear to accompany him, and also sort of give him a voice. He's described to have a deep disdain for others, and he's debatably one of the more deadly characters of the realm, with him causing a lot of chaos and death during his game, albeit to stuffed bears, but still. He's a character quite clearly favoured, I think, providing a unique type of horror to the realm, and even being referenced prior to his arrival, showing the entity was likely aware of him and his universe long before he was taken. A character with a lot of anger over not being invited to a birthday party. Tiffany Valentine is a character I think the entity quite likes due to the conflict within her. She's a character that in the later films tries to stop doing what she does because she realizes it as an addiction. I think she's not quite at that point in the realm, but definitely nearing it. She gets clear enjoyment from the trials still, and I think the entity is likely quite happy about that. She also actively mocks and interacts with the survivors during the trial, which I think shows some favour. Her inner and later desire to become better and stop killing, I do think is part of the reason for her existence here. She also has a very rocky relationship with Chucky, and with her being accompanied by him in the trials, it likely creates more emotion too. Of love sometimes, desire, but also frustration potentially. Her cosmetics even say that she is here due to her bond with Chucky defying death. Pretty powerful. A character the entity likes a lot, I think. William Birkin is a character I think the entity loves. Birkin is really torn within himself. Like literally, there is his human self and his inhuman monstrous self fighting within. One is angry and wants to attack, and the other cries for help and wails in pain. This is going to be a whole lot of emotion for the entity, and something the entity is going to absolutely love. It's a surprise really that Birkin wasn't chosen as a core character, and instead just pulled in from memories. If we look at Birkin and his voice lines and general presence in the trial, we can see how torn he is and the pain and suffering and conflict he is going through constantly. The Eddies is collecting together all the various Iron Maiden Eddies we have in game, as they're technically the same character, just in differing and various forms. We've got Pharaoh Eddie, Samurai Eddie, Stranger Eddie, and Eddie's Tribute. Eddie is a character with a lot of versatility therefore, that in the realm he literally manifests as multiple different versions and characters. This to me screams that the entity must be an Iron Maiden fan, with him appearing in all of these different ways. I think this versatility of the character is likely what drew the entity to it. The concept of a character being able to morph and embody many of the other killers of the realm, just in a slightly different form and look. This makes it pretty valuable, I think, and a perfect character to mold its will across its already present roster of killers. So I think it likes Eddie a lot. That's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and let me know your thoughts down below.